The moment you've all been waiting for. It's the Rule 5 draft preview here on the Call Up. Of course, I'm Aram Layton. He's Jack McMullen. I say it in jest,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like, I love our audience. There's been some demand for this, and I think it's really a great thought exercise in general. It's like mining for gems, right? Because there's so much talent in the minor leagues, especially on the pitching side. And I think it becomes, for the prospect sickos out there, a fun challenge to kind of see who they can dig up, who they can identify. I know it is for me. And that's exactly what we did when we, put together this list of names, plenty of them. Of course, I would say more pitching heavy than ever, or at least in recent memory, I should say, because of just the way things have kind of timed up with the draft being shortened in 2020 and just some of the implications of that. But there's a lot of fun arms here.
No doubt. I will say I can put it in another way to kind of knock it down a peg if we want. There are 30 Major League Baseball teams. There are obviously 40 spots on a 40-man roster. So we are essentially looking for the 1,201st best player in baseball that has not accumulated the 5 years of minor league service if they were an IFA guy or a high school signing, or 4 years if they were a college signing. So we really are mining for gems here, and we're getting pretty deep in the hole, I'll be honest.
See, here's the wonderful thing. I think there's a handful of players here that are better than several hundred big league or like 40-man roster like players. Prospects. But to your point, that's the fun challenge in this thing is there's 1,200 players that are like either, on roster, active rosters, protected, whatever it may be. And for whatever reason, these players weren't. And other teams are going to see some more value in the players that end up getting selected here. Of course, you have roster crunches, and that's a big part of it. And like certain teams, I think like the Rangers have a chance to get pillaged in this Rule 5 draft. I think the Astros have a chance to get beat up a little bit. Like Tampa certain teams, the Rays are always going to be a liability in terms of potentially losing some arms. But and of course the Guardians as well. But I would say the Rangers were probably the most surprising, where I was like, there's probably even some other arms that have a non-zero chance of being selected that we're not even going to get to in this Rangers org. So Rangers were probably the biggest liability, I think, in terms of potential to lose some arms. So it also just ties in with the current state of your 40-man and the prospects as well.
Well, it's also weird because the Rangers, like, they have bullpen questions going into next year. Like, they will need to add to that bullpen, and we're looking at guys that, could be a Rule 5 pickup from their organization. The problem is, like, they could be a Rule 5 pickup by the A's or by the White Sox or by the Rockies. Like, they're probably not good enough to be in a postseason caliber bullpen, but they are good enough to be in a major league bullpen. So that's the song and dance here. I would say the Rangers are probably the surprising team that's going to get pillaged here. Like, Tampa is always in that, and just looking at like the number of guys that we wrote down on that master doc, like, it was Rangers and Rays. It really felt like we were sticking to those two.
Yeah, and that felt like it, and we'll talk about it with one of the Rangers arms. I really feel like he could have been a contributor to them for this coming season. So I think we'll lay out that case, but we'll mostly start with the pitchers, kind of lean into that a little bit more. And then the bats it almost feels obligatory, but of course there always ends up being a bat taken. And honestly, over the last couple of years, the bats that were selected surprised me very much. So there always is just like this surprise that you're like, whoa, really? And I'm sure we'll see that happen again. So we might as well go through the bats that could be that, whoa, really, but we'll save that for the back end of this episode. Start with the pitchers. And I want to start with I think the best pitching prospect who is unprotected here. And that's got to be Yordanny Monegro of the Boston Red Sox. He's got to be in a vacuum the best prospect, I think, that you can take here. Of course, that's not how this thing works, right? It's you got to add him to the 40-man roster, or you got to add him to your 40-man roster, and then he's got to be on the active roster, and you got to carry him the whole year. So that's where the Red Sox, I think, are rolling the dice a little bit. They're also very filled up on the 40-man. But I was surprised to see Monegro not protected just because of the fact that he is so talented as an arm. He's young, he just turned 22 years old, that you imagine a team could take a shot on taking this guy and stashing him. If I'm a rebuilding ball club, an arm of this caliber, I would happily stash him. So Monegro, the 4.11 is he's got a over the top release.
Yeah.
At about a 93 to 95 mile per hour fastball. He is very much over the top. So it creates this downward plane. Four-seamer gets hit hard because of that. Phase that out more as the year progressed. Leaned into the sinker more. Sinker is a plus pitch. It is ridiculous because that over the top late run to the arm side, that plane is really tough for hitters. They hit below 200 against it. And then he's still trying to refine those secondaries, but he has an assortment of them that he can go to. Cutter was really effective for him last year. And then he has this kind of downer curveball that plays well from that over the top release point. He really settled in at the end of the year. And again, this would be a big leap for him going from high A, but over his final 44 high A innings, he held opponents to a 114 batting average and allowed just a 0.41 ERA. With that trend, I think this is a guy that's going to get selected, man. And we're seeing guys get picked from high A more and more. I would stash this guy because he has a chance to be a legit starter for you.
So I'll push back on the word stash with pitchers. I think you can stash a hitter. And like we saw the Nats do that with Nasim Nunez.
I think that was outrageous, to be honest. I think you almost can't stash a hitter.
Okay, I think you almost can't stash a pitcher because you need every single spot on that 26-man roster. Like you need to use all 13 arms that you have there.
Like Nas didn't do anything.
Yeah, but that's a hitter. Like I'm thinking like, okay, shit hits the fan. Like you need arms. Like there are days where Major League Baseball teams have no arms. And I don't think that you can like, you have to be confident that this guy can get beat up and bounce back like in Anthony Molina in Colorado. I don't think it's going to be that egregious. And Molina obviously had, some upper level minor league experience, but a guy that hasn't thrown a pitch yet in AA, spending an entire season on a major league roster, he's going to have to throw like 30, 40 innings. And are you prepared for that if you take him?
I think you can do it. Like I really, he gets ground balls. It's weak contact. He gets swing and miss. Like if he's throwing in middle relief spots when the game's out of hand and whatever, great. He can be that guy that just wears it. But I honestly think that there's a chance that he could just get up there and be solid. This guy threw to a 2.73 ERA. He doesn't walk guys at a very high clip. He gets whiffs and he gets walks. I think this is a dude that at the very least, if you're putting him in middle relief, I think he can be just fine. So I by stash, I think it's important to clarify that he has to throw.
He has to pitch.
He has to throw.
It's
but by
not
stash,
a Nasim Nunez thing where it's like, when was Nasim Nunez's first plate appearance? August?
I don't know.
He had 5 or fewer in
I think that was one of the most outrageous things we've seen in a long time.
You missed a year of development for this guy. Like, you're doing him a disservice. I think the Nats did Nasim Nunez a major disservice this past year.
And they played with 25 players. It just doesn't make sense.
It's a joke.
I think this, like, if you're putting Monegro in the spot where, like, I don't know, you could think of the guy on every single team that just wears it in a blow-up game or whatever. I think he's better than that, obviously, even now. Guys can make that leap a little bit more, especially if you're putting him in single inning spurts.
Yeah,
I do think he'll be effective. And then the goal is, as you develop him in this middle relief situation, then he can eventually boss him into a starter. Or if you're like, I mean, the White Sox are in a better pitching situation now, but there's a team out there, I'm sure, that is going to struggle to fill out their rotation and doesn't have many aspirations for this coming season. Why not roll him out there and see what he can do? I just think from a talent perspective, you're going to be hard pressed to find a better arm than this 6'4" kid that, is 22 years old and already is showing a feel for dominating with the fastball, a cutter off of it, a banger curveball. He mixes in a slider that looks like it can be all right. In terms of upside, I don't think there'll be an arm that we talk about on this episode that has more upside. And off of that alone, I was surprised that he was left unprotected.
Yeah, I mean, he's surely the best prospect that we're talking about. And you mentioned that off the top. And it's like, I wholly agree with you there. My only concern with taking him is it's not like he's thrown 10 innings in Portland. Like he hasn't thrown a single pitch in Double-A. And before this year, like this guy made what, 2 appearances in Greenville at the high A level. So, like these would be uncharted waters, and he's seeing a 28-year-old hitter for the first time in his life.
Well,
and it's like, okay, let's see what happens here. But for a team that has, I'm with you, no aspirations, I think this makes a lot of sense. If you feel like this guy is willing to be stashed, like willing to get beat up in an entire season, like it's a really hard year for a guy that is essentially running out there as a white flag because you want to protect him and you want to send him to AAA the next year, or you see enough improvement and he's a bullpen arm going into 26.
Well, to your point too, it's a little surprising to see the Red Sox not push him a little bit more aggressively when, in the final 9 starts, he's pitching to a 0.41 ERA. Why is this guy not knowing that he's going to be Rule 5 eligible, why would you not get him a cup of coffee in Double-A to see what you got?
They're probably disincentivizing other teams from taking him because he didn't show well at Double-A at all. And it's funny because the Red Sox, it's not funny, but like Luis Perales went down, like they had a lot of pitching injuries in the minor leagues. Like you could backfill with a prospect several times in the 2024 season, and they didn't with this guy.
So that's the interesting part. So
yeah,
it depends on what teams are looking for. But the last thing I'll say is he punched out 33% of batters in that span as well. Like if you're blending that with ground balls, put that guy in couple inning spurts, and I think he can survive out there. Another guy that I think is a high probability arm to be selected. I don't know if you saw him throw this year.
I did.
Ryan Webb, left-handed pitcher in the Guardian system. This guy screams Jack McMullen. Right? Pitchability lefty, gets the stuff to play up. And I mean, you just can't deny the numbers, right? You can talk about this year's numbers, but how about just the fact that in his professional career, he starts with 3.13 ERA and 278 and 2/3 innings, 26% strikeout rate.
Yeah.
You watched him pitch. Obviously you're one of the most well-prepared broadcasters in the game. So you already knew that going into the broadcast, but if in a vacuum, like, for the thought exercise, if you watched Ryan Webb pitch, and then after that game, I said, what do you think his career strikeout rate is? What number would you have thrown out there?
19%.
Yeah, I would have thrown out about 19% as well.
Yeah.
And it's dwindled a little bit, as he's got to the upper levels. But even then, like, he's still striking out 24, 25% of batters at the upper levels.
This year, dude, like he threw 141 in the 3rd innings, punching out 9.6 hitters per 9 innings. Like this is a guy that I watched that I would never in a million years expect that the Ks per 9 is over 1 per inning. Like I'm thinking, okay, this guy's going to be 7.5, 8 Ks per 9. No, he's 9.5, and he was higher than that at the lower levels too. And the fact that he was this good, you mentioned the career ERA sitting at 3.1 in the minor leagues. He was better in the upper levels and like a very hitter-friendly international league too. 141 innings at a 2.8 ERA. And you would think, okay, opponents are hitting 270 and he's just limiting walks. No, opponents are hitting 242 against him this year. Like there's just something weird about him. And it's pitchability, no doubt. It's not sexy by any means, but this is a 5. This is a major league 5, and he's proved it at this point. And the Guardians, like, they would absolutely be running him out there in the first 2 months next year if he made it through the Rule 5. I don't think he's making it through.
Yeah. So I guess it's a roster constraint situation here. They ultimately opted to go with some relievers to add to the 40-man, which I thought was interesting. So, like, do the Guardians think that this isn't totally going to play at the highest level? Or is it just a preference of just certain players that they feel like fits their needs more specifically? Because I mean, you look at the rotation, they still need to fill that thing out. You got a guy that, like you said, could easily eat innings, and I think one of the most, if not the most endearing aspect of it, like they added Petey Halpin to the 40-man. I know they had to add a bat and they several arms as well. But he threw 141 innings. So, like, this is a guy that can eat innings, even if he's and that's the thing that, like, with the Rule 5 arm, right? Like, if it's not going to be a guy that you can put in leverage or a project like Monegro, you want him to just eat innings for you as a 5-starter. And, like, you can push Ryan Webb, assuming that he's effective enough, to 150, 160 innings next year. And he can, be that 5 for you, even if it's a 4.5 ERA. Like, there's value to that for a lot of teams.
There is. I think the decision came down to two of the three. Franco Aleman, who was like 100% going to be added to the 40-man roster. He showed really well out of the bullpen of the upper minors. And then it came down to Webb or Doug Nikhazy. And I think they made the right decision with Nikhazy, because I do think that you can push Nikhazy to 150, 160 innings next year. And Nikhazy, like, I know the K per nine number was not as high as Ryan Webb, and the ERA was like 8 points higher. Nikhazy was 123 innings at a 2.98. And Nikhazy, there's just something more big league about his arsenal than Ryan Webb. I think Stephen Vogt and the Guardians front office is probably looking at those two saying, I feel a little bit better about Nikhazy's pitch mix at the major league level in 2025 than Ryan Webb. And this had to be a really hard decision. I think they made the right one.
This is another player where, because of that circumstance, I totally agree with you. I think high probability he gets selected.
Yeah, very high probability.
I mean, even if it doesn't work in the rotation for a little bit, this is a long relief guy that will absolutely wear it. And like that. And again, you need those guys. And as he starts to develop, you try to hope that he can get his footing. That's a guy that you can have more patience with, right? Where if it's not working every fifth day, you move him into long relief and see if things can start to click there. But off that alone, I think he's going to get, plenty of looks from plenty of teams. So what kind of works for him is the changeup, though. That's his best pitch. And I think it's a plus pitch. And mixing really well, like 4 pitches evenly to mask that 90 to 92 mile per hour fastball. And then I don't know if you could see it from your vantage point at the game, or if you were broadcasting, if it was a road game, but I was looking at a couple of different camera angles, and it's a slingshot delivery for sure. Yeah. Like it almost just looks like he's kind of like flipping it around. Like the arm comes around late, and I think it makes it hard to pick up. It just seems like there's a certain level of funk to him that
we talk about. Yeah, we talk about guys being a beat off. Like he's a beat off.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
It's a little bit off rhythm, and that's exactly what you need when you're 90 to 92. Like if he was 96, you can be perfectly on time, and you could be, the guy that every pitching coach wants you to be when you're 12 years old. But if you're 90 to 92, you got to be a little weird. You can't be stock, and he's just a little weird timing wise and arm swing wise, and the pitch mix. He lands everything for a strike enough to get away with being weird.
I might need you to talk me down off of this next guy a little bit too.
Yeah, that's fine.
Miguel Ullola, right-handed pitcher in the Astros system. Another guy I was a little surprised to see left unprotected. Mostly Double-A this year. Got a cup of coffee in Triple-A. 22 years old as well. He has an elite fastball, like elite. It's 93 to 95. But he gets 19 inches of induced vertical break from a 5.7 release height. So remember, like 5.9 release height is generally big league average, and 16 inches of vert. And the lower you get release height wise, the harder it is to induce vertical break. So the average induced vertical break from each release height a peg lower, like 5.8, is going to be, even lower than 16 inches, and so on and so forth. So to be at 5.7 with 19 inches of vert is ridiculous. And then he also gets above average extension. He gets about like 6.7. Extension. So that is going to be that kind of Christian Javier type of fastball. Yeah. And I think that's why they like Ullola. The problem is he has not had a great feel for his secondaries off of that. And that's been a challenge for him. But I mean, that is a fastball alone that dominates. Yeah. And in the upper levels last year, Texas League, and then a little bit of AAA, opponents hit 140 against his fastball with ridiculous whiff rates. And that's a fastball. We talk about it. Like, what's the tipping point where you like, okay, you're using the fastball egregiously? He's not there yet. 50%, he could bump that up to 60 and survive, especially if it's in shorter spurts. I know you're looking at the walk rate. And
but like, I'm not going to talk you off of this, because I do think that this is a Rule 5 pick just in a bullpen. Like, I don't think he's a starting pitcher at the major league level because of the walks, because he has trouble landing everything aside from the fastball.
Yeah, and he's 22 though, so you could say and then stash him and develop him in the bullpen and then see what happens too. So at least there's some to dream on too. This isn't a 26-year-old
for sure, but he does feel like a flick the glove forward and throw an inning kind of guy, and like Those people exist in the major leagues. Like, that is a thing that happens. If you put Sean Manaea in a 2-inning spurt, he could get away with 70% fastball usage. Feel very confident with that. It would just like change when, he was seeing it the third time through, and he's not a crossfire guy like Manaea is, but Christian Javier, if I'm not mistaken, was a swingman for the first 2 years of his major league career, and he was a really, really good swingman. I'm just saying, opponents, you said opponents hit 140 against his fastball this year. They hit 163 against him overall.
Huh.
And you can look at that a couple of ways. Oh, opponents were better against his breaking stuff than his fastball? That's weird. I'm looking at it as this guy threw 130 innings and opponents hit 163 against him. Nobody does that in the upper levels, especially when you're in the Texas League and the PCL. Like, two of the more hitter-friendly environments in minor league baseball. Opponents are hitting 163 against him. That shows you the stuff is good enough one time through. Absolutely think this guy's a multi-inning reliever. I just don't know if it'll turn into a guy that can give you 6 innings in a Major League Baseball game.
Yeah, and that's the challenge. But at least in that situation, if he's not everything you're hoping, there's still an alternate role that he can fill. Whereas with the Webb, we still think he's going to get picked. But if he's not going 4 or 5 innings for you,
then what's the point? Yeah,
exactly. And just to compare, like Yordanny Monegro, who I'm pounding the pavement for, he held opponents to a 182 batting average in high A. Ullola, 160, you said?
163 in Double A and Triple A
in the Texas League and the PCL.
Yeah.
And Monegro, I think I said cutter. It's like a gyro slider. That's his best pitch there. And everything working downward, though, it's a little different. If I'm going to pick a guy to thrust into the big leagues, it's probably going to be a guy with that invisible or that just incredible ride fastball. So Ullola, I think I would have as much confidence taking as anybody. You hope that the command can come along, and that's going to be the thing to monitor here, I guess, is how does that command come along? But maybe if he uses the fastball a little bit more, that allows him to fill up the zone a little bit more, and he can build from there. 14% walk rate is definitely going to put some teams off. But when opponents have a slug of 296 and you're a high carry fastball guy in those environments, that's enough for me to say, I'm going to take a shot on this guy.
No doubt.
And you imagine if that fastball too, in 1 to 2 inning spurts, ticks up to 95, 96, that's a 70 grade heater.
For sure.
Like you said, he could flick the glove and go.
Yeah. And there are guys that exist like that. I'm having trouble because, 9 a.m. Pacific, I'm having trouble pulling those names off the top of the dome. But there are guys that exist like that in bullpens where, it's not 99, 100 miles an hour. It's 95 miles an hour, but they get away with 66 to 70% fastball usage because it's so good.
Yep. 100%. Next guy, I think, is probably the most underrated, maybe reliever down the stretch of the minor league season last year, and potentially one of the Rangers' casualties, Bryan Magdaleno. This dude, so I think a big reason why he's probably not on a lot of Rule 5 radars at this point is he was in low A as recent as as recent as August 1st. But in that span, he mowed through high A, and then he mowed through Double A and finished the year there. And from July 3rd onward, 17 appearances for Bryan Magdaleno. He pitched 21 consecutive scoreless between low A, high A, and Double A, striking out 35 and walking 8. You know how many hits he allowed in that span?
Not a lot. I have a little bit of something to add to that.
1.
Yeah, there you go.
1. And that one hit, I'm trying to find where it even came. It came, oh my gosh, it was his second to last inning of the year.
There you go.
He threw 19 consecutive no-hit innings?
Yeah.
Holy shit. Left-handed reliever, by the way.
Yeah.
It's 95. Then he's got a slider and then a sinker as well. So it's a four-seamer, a slider, and a sinker, which is interesting. This guy's disgusting.
I mean, opponents on the year between low A, high A, double were 19. I'm not accounting for walks. 19 hits and 168 plate appearances. For those calculating, that's a 134 batting average against.
Yeah, you got no shot.
Welcome to a major league bullpen.
Yeah, this guy has to be taken. Guess what it is too? Like it's the crossfire.
Yeah,
It's the crossfire from the left
left
side. That I'm telling you is like taking over. If you can do it, it's really hard to do, but if you can do it, it's taken over. But the challenge with the crossfire is those guys, they may not throw as many strikes. And that was Magdaleno's challenge at points. Now he's throwing strikes. So if he's throwing strikes from that crossfire, at the very least, lefties have no shot. Yeah. But he seemed to have no issue with righties either. So he's in a good spot here. I think this is a player that, and this is why I love the Rule 5. There was a point around the All-Star break, maybe a little bit before that, right? Like at the end of June, where it's like, oh, this is a low A reliever. And then between June and September, he may have pitched his way into a big league bullpen.
Yes.
And that's why we got the Rule 5 draft right there. And this is a guy that could legitimately be where the hell did this guy come from?
Yeah.
Rule 5 pick. Like in terms of impact next season, I don't know if there's a guy that could make a bigger impact for a team than Magdaleno. Like I think a team that is competitive could add him to the fold.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And it's, kind of resemblant of another Ranger that was taken in the Rule 5 from a year ago. Like there was a guy and he did this at the upper levels, but I mean, Justin Slayton proved to be a really good reliever for a good team in Boston. And why can't this just be the Slayton of this year? And that sucks that the Rangers have lost out on both those guys. But you know what? Like, have fun with Mark Church.
Yeah. 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 I will say the Rangers are probably a ball club here that maybe they've done a lot of really good things on the pitching development side. They may not have the best feel for the 40-man. We'll see. Magdaleno should be on that. I love Walter Pennington. Absolutely love him. But like that's even a guy too where you compare what these guys can do for you. I think Magdaleno might be able to make a little bit more of an impact if it all clicks.
Yeah, I think that there's just a conservative approach to adding guys to the 40-man roster. And Slayton was one where you just kind of scratch your head and
that
say,
one,
why was he not there?
We said that's the best guy in the Rule 5.
Yeah, I mean, it was a different beast with Slayton. But with this one, like you just watched Edgardo Enriquez pitch in the CS in the World Series. Like he was on these rosters for a World Series winner. You might have just had the AL version of Edgardo Enriquez without him making the big leagues. Like, why not roster that guy?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a surprise. And I think teams are going to be licking their chops. Another Ranger that's interesting, I think does have a good chance to get selected is Dane Acker. Right-hander, 6'3", 205, a little bit older. I don't know what the role is going to be. I don't know if it was an innings management thing or if they ended up just moving him to the bullpen. But he had a good year overall. However, around August 14th, gave up 11 hits, scattered them though, and only gave up 3 earned runs in 6 1/3. And then from that point on, he only worked in relief. I don't know if that was, again, I want to imagine that was innings management because he had not thrown nearly that many innings before. And I think he came off of injury in 22 and 23 was a build-up innings-wise. And then 24, I think he blew past already any innings total that he had previously seen. So I'm imagining that's what it was. Because this is a guy that the Arsenal screams starter. It's fastball with good characteristics, a changeup, a curveball, and a slider that whole mix in. This is a higher floor guy, I think, relative to some of the other arms too, in terms of being able to potentially start.
Probably, but is there enough of an identity here to the point where you would take him? Like this feels like the tweener. It's like, you know what? He might end up in Round Rock next year because it was really good. Like it was a 3.05 ERA and 97 innings in Frisco. But I'm looking at this guy and it's like, okay, he's not a starter that we're moving to the bullpen just as like a chunk reliever. He's not a reliever that, we're running out there in the 6th, 7th inning. Like he feels a bit like a tweener to me.
He does. The release is kind of stock. He does get good carry. It would have to be a team that sees something maybe where they think they can unlock a little bit more secondary wise. Sure. But yeah, I agree. He feels like the classic, very borderline Rule 5 guy. And you throw him out there and it's like sink or swim, kid. We'll see. Yep. But with a tweak or two, again, and that's the thing nowadays, right? Is all these teams have different philosophies, especially on the pitching side. they could say, hey, oh, well, guys, from this release point, we can really work with him on a slider and unlock something. And all of a sudden, there's a little bit more there. He clearly can create vert. It's a high release at 6'2", but he gets 19 inches of vert. So, I mean, that's going to play. That's still, comfortably above average. Yeah. But I'm with you. Like, it's not as clear cut of a role there. That could be if there's another team that, had a starter circled, let's say they really wanted Ryan Webb, they need somebody else that could potentially eat innings for them. Like, if you're the Rockies, maybe a guy that could make sense. Yeah. But I think Webb is going to end up making sense for the Rockies, funky lefty. Right. But no, Acker's still another solid arm, though. I think that could be considered.
For sure.
We're going to talk about a few more arms here, and then the bats. For that, quick break. Okay. This is I'm going to pitch you on this player here, because another very far off guy that I would be, if I was, I guess, working for a team, like, try it, maybe, please try it. He looks fun. Tanner Kohlhepp, Tigers. Kohlhepp. Do you pronounce? I feel like if there's two H's, right? It's Kohlhepp. I feel like I have to say Kohlhepp.
So I disagree. I think it's Kohlhepp.
Okay.
I feel like that's where we're at.
You know what? I will always trust you on the pronunciations.
I
will ride or die with you on the pronunciations.
I appreciate that.
Kohlhepp.
Tanner Kohlhepp.
That said, when I go and dig up video, and if I hear a Kohlhepp, you're going to hear from me immediately.
That's fine. Yeah.
I will ride or die with you still.
I'll eat it.
25 years old and hasn't pitched above high A.
Yeah.
Are you out?
Probably. Unfortunately, like it's one of those where it sounds so simple, but in the words of Jim Harbaugh, so simple it just might work. Like I don't know. You haven't thrown a pitch in Erie, and like I saw some really bad relievers in Toledo. Like, why wasn't Tanner Kohlhepp one of those guys?
I don't know, but he should have been. I think his fastball average is 97. And I think has some good characteristics. I'll get you those in a moment. But the other side that's really fascinating is he commands the heck out of his two secondaries. He landed his slider for a strike at a 76% clip, garnered, holy crap. Well, that was down the second half of the season. He landed the slider over the course of the season at a 69% clip for a strike and garnered a 35% chase rate. But if you queue up from July 1st onward, his final 21 appearances, he landed the slider for a strike at a 74% clip with a 40% chase rate. His changeup, he landed for a strike at a 66% clip with a 45% chase rate. And then he has the fastball as well. No surprise. He was very, very good down the stretch there. But the numbers just, you'd think they would be way better for the stuff that he has. Those final 21 appearances, he did have a 2.1 ERA. And opponents at 159 against him. What I like is he blends the whiff with the ground ball, which is always what I'm looking for when I'm trying to find a guy that could just survive a huge leap. 34% strikeout rate, 52% ground ball rate. Those will play. Like those are good things to see. It's a running fastball, a run and ride. He gets about 11 and 16, 11 vert, 16 horizontal from a 5.3 release point. It's funky. I don't know why he wasn't better, but you saw him get better at the end of the year. And also through several outings down the stretch, the fastball velocity ticked up. Over his final 15 outings, he averaged 97 flat on the fastball.
So why would you not push him to Erie? And I ask that Tiger question a lot, to be honest. Like, Jaden Ham was so good this year.
Yeah.
Why was every start in West Michigan? Like, shouldn't he have gone to Erie at some point? I thought Job went too late. I know Jackson Job was dealing with the injury, but like, I thought he proved way more than he needed to prove in AA before he got his AAA cameo at the end of the year, before that, big league out of the bullpen experience. Like, it's just kind of weird to me with Detroit, the way that they handle it. Like, Ty Madden was held in Erie for a long time in 2023, and he even opened there, if I'm not mistaken, in 24. Troy Melton, I know the ERA was over 5, but like, the K numbers were good. The walk numbers were held.
He was in low A forever, I think.
Melton was in low A. And Melton
was I felt like that, I think.
Well, and dude, he was in AA for the entirety of the year this year. Like, Melton was 7 starts in Lakeland, 15 starts in West Michigan in 23. But this year, he threw 100 innings in Erie. And like, I know that it was a 5.1 ERA, but I mean, dude, it was 10.5 strikeouts per nine and 2.5 walks per nine. Like, get that guy to AAA. Like, let's see what it looks like here with Melton. But I don't know. The Tigers, like, they just do that thing. I feel like you could kind of chalk that up situationally, and the stuff sounds awesome. But he hasn't thrown a pitch above high A, and he's, again, 25 years old.
Yeah. This would be a pure, like, front office betting on the stuff. Like, and it wouldn't shock me just off of that, because stuff-wise, it's up there with anybody. But, it's a big leap, and they haven't had a ton of results yet.
These are the analytics guys. These are the nerds, the analytics guys. They're ruining baseball by taking a guy that throws 97
with great chase markers.
Yeah.
Alex Santos, another guy that was left off. Now, the more that I've looked at these other arms, so I think there's a chance Santos just doesn't get taken.
Yeah.
Did show well in the AFL. Is known as like one of the best prep like pitching prospects out of New York, like ever, which is kind of wild. But it just hasn't come together for him as a pro because of the injuries. But the Astros, they threw him out in the fall league. He looks really good there. I think there's a lot to like. He gets good ride on the fastball. The secondaries are intriguing. This could be one that just, if a team, that's been maybe following him since he was a borderline first round prospect out of high school that wants to take a chance on him, could grab him. I think it helps that his slider is a clear plus pitch. He has a cutter, a changeup, curve working off of that. Those have all kind of been a work in progress, but fastball is above average, 95. I compared to the names that we've talked about, even though he's 22, probably not as likely to be selected, especially with like Ullola and that same system and a couple more guys that we're about to talk about.
Yeah, I just feel like it wasn't good enough, during the regular season, and I know that it was hampered by injury, but like it's hard to convince, and I don't think you need to convince a fan base with a Rule 5 draft pick. I don't think the fan base is really tapped in with the Rule 5 draft pick, but it's hard to look at this guy and say 23 innings at a 7.8 ERA, and this guy's like worthy of being, on a big league roster right now. I think it's really important to look at the fall league numbers as well. And you mentioned the fall league; it was a really good showing. Batting average against was down 100 points. Like, opponents hit 290 against him in 23 innings at the AA level, and then in the AFL, 17 2/3 opponents hit $188. So he's clearly getting healthy. I'd like to see another season of him getting healthy.
Yep. Yeah, me too. And I think anyone that selects him, you already have enough risk. Yes, if he gets hurt, you can just stash him on the IL, but you don't really want to do that when you have a chance with all these arms that we're talking about to potentially upgrade your bullpen or add a decent arm to the fold.
Yeah,
guy that I think, for whatever reason, Yankees prospects that I don't like as much as some of the others that are available always end up getting taken. And I think this is exactly what could happen here, even though he's a solid arm. Zach Messenger. Yeah. 6'6" righty who, threw well in AA overall, and just has a good feel for three pitches. It's a fastball that only averaged 92 though, but the slider, he landed for a strike at a 67% clip. Curveball, he landed for a strike at a 71% clip, and they're distinctly different enough. He'll mix in a changeup that's definitely further off though, and that's going to be a big wrinkle for him. But the curveball being so consistent, I think helps him spell the lefties. You're hoping he's a 5. This is like the type of situation where I think the stuff plays because he's got the secondary command, the breaking ball command in AA. Don't know if it plays as well in triple. Another guy where you could say, well, why didn't we see him in triple? Spent the whole year in AA, even though he was producing some results, and you knew he was going to turn 25 at the end of the year. This is the type of like arm that I feel like the Rockies would take and say, oh, he's 6'6" righty. He can be a starter for us. And they just throw him out there like Anthony Molina. Could be an innings eater. I just think when you're trying to find a role, this is the tweener that you alluded to earlier too.
Yeah, I do like this guy. I liked the dive when I did it. The only thing is I'm looking at him and Ryan Webb side by side, and I'm taking Webb 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I understand that there's more than one pick in the Rule 5 draft, so he's probably going to go. But at the end of the day, like I do just deem Webb, and honestly, Ullola as a guy, if you're looking for somebody that threw 130 innings at the minor league level last year, he's probably 4 or 5 on the depth chart. And how many of those guys are actually going to go? Like exactly. There's typically 2 or 3 starting pitchers that go in the Rule 5 draft, and the rest are, fill your bullpens out.
Exactly. And that's why I agree. But talking about filling the bullpen out, there's a chance to grab maybe the best slider in the minor leagues. It's up there. Evan Reifert's back, baby.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't talked about him too much. And since he took the fall league by storm like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Another guy that I don't know why he didn't get to AAA by the end of the year. Not sure. Maybe that was part of the situation here where they knew that the Rays knew that they were not going to be able to roster him.
Yeah.
So why have him, having success in Durham? Keep him in AA where everybody has success pitching wise. I mean, the whole world's going to know about Evan Reifert's slider at this point. So it is a ridiculous pitch. The problem or the challenge will be that this is one of those situations where he's got to throw a slider like almost all the time. Mm-hmm. So you're adding a guy that is going to mostly try to mask the fastball. So that's the hard part. But still, I mean, this is an utterly dominant slider, and he still throws 94. So, if you can find something with the fastball, then, he could be a monster. Since the start of the 2022 season, this is a ridiculous stat. He's faced 428 batters. What do you think they're hitting against his slider, which he's thrown 50% of the time? Against
his slider. So I know this year opponents hit $155 against him in 41 1/3, but that's factoring in everything else. That's factoring in 100% of his arsenal. 132.
077.
Aha, that's fun.
I got a better one for you. He's given up 1 home run on his slider since the start of the 2022 season. Guess who hit it? He's an unprotected Rule 5 bat that will not get selected, and you put him in the Google Doc as a joke.
No way. Austin Hendrick of the Cincinnati Reds.
He has the only home run off of Evan Reifert's slider since the start of the 2020. This sport is magnificent.
I might just take him for that alone. I might just take him. I would also think about taking him for the red eye black that he wore in his draft headshot.
Yeah, I know you've always loved that one.
Yeah, crazy.
I mean, think about that. 14 for 183 is what hitters were,
dude,
and since 2022, and 2 extra base hits. One is Austin Hendrick, and then the other is Anderson De Los Santos. I don't even know who that is.
No idea.
Wild. So that might be enough for somebody to just take him. Say, just go into the 7th inning and rip a trillion sliders, and no one's going to hit you.
Well, what's funny is Tampa was the first team to do that. They did it with Matt Whistler. They did it for 2 years, and Matt Whistler was awesome. And he's still doing it in AAA, by the way. Like, he's ripping 90% slider, and it's funny. But they did that, and they got a really good reliever out of Matt Whistler. So I'm kind of surprised that he never even got a shot. But, I mean, they did a really good job IDing Kevin Kelly. And I know that Kelly was taken by Colorado and then traded to Tampa. It's essentially like Kelly, but at the minor league level. And I will say, in 4 years, we're going to look back at this 2024 Montgomery Biscuits team and be like, holy smokes, this team was insane. Like, I'm looking at the pitching staff right now. Like, Ryan Pepio made a rehab, sure, but like Keyshawn Askew, right? 64 1/3. And by the way, Tampa didn't protect him at a 1.4 ERA. Yoniel Curé, 5 starts at a 1.75. Evan Reifert, 35 appearances at a 1.96. Ian Seymour, 91 1/3 at a 2.36 ERA. Like, Cole Wilcox, 20 starts at a 3.18 ERA.
Also unprotected, I believe.
Also unprotected. Like, the fact that this rotation, this pitching staff in general, had Reifert left unprotected, Askew left unprotected, and Wilcox left unprotected is crazy to me. But that's how deep Tampa is. And that's what happens when you acquire Hunter Biggie for Isaac Paredes at the deadline.
Yeah, welcome to the operation that the Rays have. And that's why a lot of the other trade packages, they wanted players that are nowhere near Rule 5 eligible so they could have some time. And even then, they've got some potential casualties here. Any other arms you want to mention before we move on to the bats?
One more, Pirate bias aside, I think Eddy Yean could be a pick. Eddy Yean, who we saw in the fall league for a little bit, and I know that it wasn't overwhelmingly great in the fall league, but this guy is heavy sinker stuff. Like, he's going to roll ground balls all the time. And Eddy Yean, at the minor league level this year, 48 appearances, 75 innings. So he was a multi-inning reliever. And he, It was 8.5 Ks per 9, but he wasn't walking anybody. And with that hard of a sinker, it feels like this guy could be a survive at the 6th inning, get a bunch of ground balls and get out of it type of guy.
Yeah, mop up duty. Definitely a guy that can just get those grounders. I could see that. And he was a guy that I liked way back. Before he was. Is he still listed? Like I see what he's listed at. He definitely used to look a lot different. He's listed at 6'3", 268 now.
That's probably what he is, to be honest.
Like to be like a slender, loose, like
no, not really.
Way back,
dude. He was way back, like the 2019 Auburn Double days, like before he was traded for Will Crow.
Yes. Am I thinking of the wrong guy here? Because I remember watching him on the Florida backfields and saying, like, okay, that guy can sling it.
You might be thinking of the wrong guy, because I remember I was like, this teenager is jacked. I was like, whoa. And then he's put on more weight, since then. But yeah, you might be thinking of the wrong guy. I'm not sure.
I just queued. Oh my gosh, yeah, he was jacked. I'm definitely thinking of the wrong guy. I just queued up Complex League at bat. That's the first one I could find. Eddy Yean versus Nazem Nunez in 2019.
There we go. Yeah.
Definitely thinking of the wrong guy. He is built.
Yeah, really built for like an 18-year-old, 19-year-old at the time.
That's a 26-year-old's body. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So he was jacked.
We jotted down some other pitching names that are left unprotected that could be taken, but we feel like they're kind of tier 2. A guy that I know we were really excited about coming into 24 was Alex Pham with Baltimore. I don't think Alex Pham is getting taken.
No.
Jose Acuna is probably the step below Messenger when it comes to the starters and the pitchability guys. An interesting name for me is Jack Anderson with the Tigers. Anderson, it's a really weird angle, and if I'm not mistaken, the changeup is very, very solid. A name that I've seen get buzz is Chandler Champlain, but he was very not good in Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be very surprised. Carlos Duran with the Dodgers, Christian Hernandez with the Yankees. Griff McGarry was left unprotected. He has to throw strikes in AAA before somebody takes a shot on him in the big leagues.
How about he has to throw strikes in the Arizona Fall League?
Yeah,
he didn't do that either. Carlos Duran's whiff numbers are nuts. That is a guy that just off of whiff numbers could get selected, and there's just like the Dodgers intrigue. I'm telling you, there's just a weird level of teams just being more willing to pluck from the Dodgers and the Yankees and things like that. But Duran did finish the year in AAA. I think that's a good shout. As a 6'6", just stuff wise could definitely slot into a bullpen. But the command is definitely a question there.
Yeah. Did you see anything on Jack Anderson?
Yeah, the splitter's gross.
Yeah, okay, that's what it is. I knew it was like a split change type thing. Like, I think that thing's a big league pitch. The question is the fastball also a big league pitch? The answer is probably no, but I wouldn't be shocked to see him taken.
Yeah, no, likewise. I mean, and what's interesting is fastball, slider, both strike rate of 70%. And then he also mixes in that splitter, as you mentioned, which is gross. So that wouldn't be a shocking option either.
Yeah. So that's what we got pitching wise.
Yeah. Bats, we'll go through probably a handful and wrap things up. Before that, one more quick break. All right, Jack, the floor is yours for Cooper Bowman, but I'm going to tear your dreams down when I talk about his AAA stats. But no, Cooper Bowman, we just talked about him in the A's system. Can move around the diamond a lot. Speedster. Seems like he could be that kind of super utility type of player, but he did struggle in the PCL at the end of the year, which could put some teams off, but you don't get an opportunity for an athlete like this very often.
I would say struggle would be an understatement with what happened in AAA, but I will say we were talking about Caleb Durbin a couple weeks ago, and clearly his fall league landed him on the Yankees 40-man roster and might have landed him on the Yankees opening day roster. This feels like the poor man's Durbin, does it not? Like with some outfield versatility as well.
Yeah, I can see that because there's this like speedster that produces a little bit more pull side pop than you think. He's been in Durbin, obviously, so that's where you see the EVs a little bit higher. But like when you're looking at the underlying data and everything, it looks pretty good. He had 90th percentile of 103 miles per hour. He didn't chase that much. It was a 23% chase rate. Contact rates were solid. The difference is Durbin's contact rates are, elite, but the difference on the Bowman side is he hits the ball harder. So there's some fun aspects to what he does. And with the speed and dynamic ability, we saw Nazem Nunez get picked last year. This absolutely could be a guy cut from a similar cloth who actually is more big league ready.
Yeah. A guy that I will say I feel like very confident in, could be serviceable in the big leagues in a limited role. I don't know if he's going to get selected because he hasn't played a AAA game yet, but Christian Franklin is an outfielder with the Chicago Cubs. And I'll give you the pitch on Franklin right now. He walks as much as anybody in the upper levels of the minor leagues. And he was in the Southern League, which we've documented very well, like as pitcher friendly a league as we saw in quite some time this year. In 98 games, it was a 268, 398, 366 slash. He only had 5 pumps, but he was 34 for 41 in the stolen base department. He walked 16.5% of the time. He K'd 21% of the time. And he gave you a 135 WRC plus while splitting his time pretty much evenly between all 3 outfield spots. There's defensive versatility clearly in the outfield. The Cubs don't need him, clearly. Like, they're running into some issues here, and they're dangling Cody Bellinger for anybody that would want to, possibly engage in that conversation. And like, I just feel like this guy could be a good 4th outfielder in the major leagues as soon as next year.
14% chase rate's crazy, as you mentioned with the
dude.
walks. Like 60% ground ball rate's also crazy.
Yeah.
So, but when you have the speed that he has and the defensive ability, potentially, he can just work his walks and play great defense and run into enough, extra base hits and things like that. It could work. It's really hard to get a proper gauge on the offensive abilities, considering he was playing out there in that Southern League, and those numbers actually end up being a lot better than most of the hitters in the Southern League. But also, that OPS is buoyed by a near 400 OBP. So interesting. And for a team that might be looking for a 4th outfielder and an athlete, could be an option. But that ground ball rate is a little glaring for me.
Understood. Another guy here, and I know that he's kind of red flags galore. Kalai Rosario with the Minnesota Twins. Rosario is a guy that I know has gotten some pub here, and he got out to the fall league, right? But 67 of his 69 games this year came in AA. Slash 238, 329, 428. He had 10 homers in 69 games. He walked 11.5% of the time. He K'd 29.6% of the time. It was a 113 WRC plus, but there's clearly power here. There's some speed, I guess, as well. But this K rate, like, if it's 30% in AA, I don't know what it looks like in the big leagues.
That's the thing. And there's just so much swing and miss. And he's 22. He hits lefties better. So that's something that maybe a team feels like you need to be a power platoon guy. Teams are going to be mesmerized by the 108 mile per hour, 90th percentile exit velocity and chase rate below 20% for sure.
Yeah.
But you got to be able to make more contact than what he has done. What I will say is he has some decent out of zone contact rates and things like that. So you wonder why he's not able to hedge the K a little bit more, but maybe a team's willing to take a shot. I think he has a chance in this Rule 5 to be taken because of how light the bats are and because of how young he is and the batted ball markers and swing decisions. I think it would be a very aggressive move, and I don't really see him succeeding at the big league level. But a year after we saw Davis and De Los Santos selected, I could see it happening, and he could serve as like that lefty platoon piece if you want to try to roll him out that way. But unless it's a team that's just trying to throw stuff at the wall and see if it sticks, again, like the White Sox or whatever, who could just use any bat and like, hey, well, we've got a spot for you to try it. Why not? I don't really see how, like, I don't see many teams that could really justify rostering him, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then 2 Ryan Nodas to wrap here. We'll start with the Ryan Noda from the Rays. That's Bob Seymour. I remember when he was Bobby Seymour at Wake Forest, but now he's Bob. And I mean, he had a really good season, kind of out of nowhere. I mean, you want to talk about Manzardo and Aranda and Meade and all these guys that are power hitting, infielders in the Rays organization, how there's no space for them with Yandy Diaz. Like, all of a sudden you're looking at Bobby Seymour this year between AA and AAA, 123 games. He had a 140 WRC plus, 281, 351, 523, 28 homers, drove in 95. Big problem is 30.5% K rate.
Yeah, that it's like he hits bombs.
He hits bombs.
He's fun, but 37% chase. that's going to be a problem. And then a 66% contact rate. He doesn't particularly crush righties versus lefties or anything like that. Would be a fun flyer, but the being limited to first base doesn't really help his case.
No,
it's so fun when he connects, though. Oh my goodness, I'm looking at some of these batted. He hit a home run off of Colby Howard. It was a 71 mile per hour curveball. He hit it 460.
Damn.
He hit he hit another one 470 off of Josimar Cousin. Another curveball. Don't throw him curveballs. But yeah, he hits bombs. Maybe a team can speculate on the power, but chase near 40, below average contact rates, limited to first, probably tough.
Yeah. One more first baseman, Blaine Crim, who I actually think could very well be taken.
This is Noda. This is Noda.
Yeah, this is Ryan Noda. Blaine Crim of the Texas Rangers. Repeated AAA in 2024, 134 games, had a 111 WRC plus, 277, 370, 469, 33 doubles, 20 homers, drove an 86. He walked 12% of the time. He K'd 17% of the time. There's nothing left for him to do in minor league baseball. So, it's time that somebody gives him a shot a la Noda and a la one more guy that I'm actually going to add after Blaine Crim.
If I mean, I don't know every single team's exact 26-man roster situation. I would take this guy if I had an opening for a bat. I mean, it's hitter friendly environments. Yeah, using the in the PCL and Texas League and whatever. He's got a 90th percentile of 106. He gets his swings off, but he also produces solid contact rates, especially against fastballs. And that's what I'm looking for. Like when you're taking a Rule 5 bat, like what were we talking about the other day? Like you can carve out a career off of destroying fastballs and making good swing decisions against breaking balls. Yep. Get 304 with a 938 OPS against fastballs and a 93% end zone contact rate against heaters. And then he swings and misses against breaking balls, but he hedges it with a good approach. Only a 24% chase rate on spin. If you don't chase spin too much and you crush fastballs, you can be a solid piece. Remember, it doesn't need to be an everyday first baseman. If he's a solid bench power bat, platoon bat, whatever it may be, or you try him as a second division regular, I think this is a guy that absolutely deserves a shot.
Yeah. And last but not least, a guy that actually kind of slid by because he's projected, quote unquote, by Fangraphs and Roster Resource to be on the Dodger bench, although he is Rule 5 eligible. A guy that just hit a walk-off home run in the Premier 12 for Team USA, and a guy that I've liked for a very long time, Ryan Ward, an outfielder. I think Ryan Ward could absolutely be taken at this point. Ryan Ward is 26 years old, about to turn 27, I do think. He'll be 27 by next year. He has yet to make his debut. But Ryan Ward played a full season in High A in 2021, had a 135 WRC plus. Full season in Double A in 2022, had a 100 WRC plus. He struggled in his full season in 23 in Triple A, so he repeats it this year. And this guy had a 103 WRC plus in Triple A. He is a power threat. He had 33 home runs in the PCL this year. And I know that 33 homers typically shouldn't translate to a 103 WRC plus, but that is the PCL. I do think that this guy is good enough to be a big leaguer. It is Noda from the same organization, Ryan Ward.
No doubt. You probably stash him from lefties, and that's fine. Against righties, he had a 942 OPS, 28 home runs against righties. So you stash him from lefties. The chase is a little high, so that will be a little bit of a challenge, but the production has been so good. The fact that he's not a first baseman, that he can play corner outfield, this is definitely a guy that I think a lot of teams, and he can play a little first too. So you get the first and the corner outfield side of things. It is very much the Noda situation again. I could see plenty of teams being willing to take a shot on him with the production that we've seen. And he just hits the ball in the air consistently. Yeah.
4 other names that we considered. Nathan Hickey, a catcher who was pretty decent with the Red Sox in Worcester. Andrew Navigato is an infielder that can bounce around a little bit. Third, short, second. He can play some corner outfield with the Tigers this year. Had a really good year in Toledo. Cam Devaney is a very, very good defender. He was with Omaha this year. And then Abimelech Ortiz, first base DH with the Rangers. Those are guys that could be considered.
I could see Devaney with the glove value. Right. And we're saying that's a way that you can very much justify the draft and stash. Not to the degree of an Azim Nunez, but if you want a bench utility guy, doesn't have to hit that much. And if he's playing great defense, you feel good. I could see Devaney doing that. He also hits lefties well. And then Abimelec Ortiz would be an aggressive send, but final 50 games, he OPS well over 1,000. So a team could just say, hey, clearly something clicked here. We've seen him hit 30 home runs in the past in the minors. Could be a shot that a team wants to take on, a guy that I would say have more upside than some of the other names that we mentioned, but also a lot more downside too. Yeah. But there might be some more bats out there. We're going to keep mining around. We might do like a last update, like last version if a couple of other names pop up. Let us know in the YouTube comments if there was anybody that you think we should have mentioned, and I'll get back on some thoughts on that player as well. And that'll do it for this Rule 5 preview. Can't wait to see who actually gets selected. That's always so much fun. And then of course we'll recap it when that comes along. Royals top prospects is next. We should have that for you next week. Yep. Any final thoughts, Jack, before we send it to Thanksgiving?
Happy Thanksgiving, people. We'll talk to you next week. Arm, safe flying. Enjoy your flight.
Oh, I will, of course. And I'm sure they'll remind me to enjoy just sitting and doing nothing.
You want a Biscoff cookie?
Just tell me to tolerate the flight. Like I enjoy it. Who enjoys the flight? Like, let's go. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I love minimal legroom. That's my big thing. Yeah. I love only being able to recline a certain degree. No, one last thing. I was recently made aware that you're not supposed to drink the coffee on airplanes.
Yeah, I think that's a wise tale. Because I drink it all the freaking time.
I drink it all the time too. And like, listen, I've got issues. I don't think they're related to airplane coffee.
All my issues were well before the airplane coffee.
Yeah, so I think we're fine.
That's the one thing that helps me tolerate my flight. So
yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah, enjoy your doctor's visit. Who says that?
Yeah.
So, anyways, that'll do it. I hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving. That's something that can be enjoyable.
Yep.
And be safe, especially people drive nuts this time of year, by the way. So please be safe. We will talk to you all next week.
Go Bears.